Please welcome Fall Out Boy. Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Welcome to the lounge. Welcome back to the lounge, I think, right?
Thank you. Thanks.
Playing the Metro tonight, sold out show. I don't know if you know this, but it's a very popular ticket.
We've heard.
It's a popular ticket. People are calling in the hundreds. And how mean we are, we're making people call on the phone to win these tickets.
591-8300. There we go.
Right.
It was me when I was 10 years old.
That's what I was going to ask. You know, up in Wilmette, calling, even Q101 back in the day to try to win. This is how we would win things.
Exactly. I never won.
You never won. But a lot of people are excited to see you guys play the Metro tonight.
We're excited to play the Metro tonight. It's been a while.
The first time you went to the Metro as a fan, as a going to a show at the Metro early on, before you're playing the Metro, have any memories of playing there or going there and seeing a band there?
I think I saw the Smoking Popes there once, back in the day, maybe.
Yeah. How old were you then?
I was 17. Yeah, it's a long story.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of shows there, so it's hard. I kind of can't remember my first one. One of the most affecting ones was Get Up Kids and At the Drive-In. I was in high school and I was just blown away.
And did that flip the switch for you guys, saying, "Oh wow, this is what I want to do. I want to be on that
Not
stage"?
necessarily, because I had seen, we were all, all of us were punk kids, so there would be shows in basements and whatever. But there was something about the Metro seemed like this other level. If you made it to the Metro, that was like, ooh, you're probably in tune. It's like.
And that first time you played the Metro
possibly.
stage.
Possibly. Possibly. And then we played the Metro, not in tune.
Do you remember that first show? And what went wrong, perhaps?
A lot of things went wrong, but you're so, over the moon about it. It was crazy. I remember it was one of those free shows where you were allowed to give out tickets, and Pete and I went into Kinko's, and because Metro said, you give out as many tickets as you want, as because you're this little band that no one's going to come see. So we printed as many as we could, and I remember we went to like a Kinko's or whatever, and the lady was like, "I see you counterfeiting tickets over there."
Wow.
Remember that?
Kinda.
When's the last time you've been to a Kinko's? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, that's what we had to do back then. Well, congrats on the new album, which comes out on March 24th. So much for Stardust. And what we know of it so far, the second song was released today. 5 years since the last album was out. And what led you to decide that now is the time to put out an album and put out a Fall Out Boy record?
I mean, I feel like when we were, during the pandemic, we were all, with our families a bunch. And I think when we talked about it coming out of that, to leave and leave your family, it has to be for something important. It can't just be like a whatever show or something like that. And so we kind of talked about making music that's important. I think also for a band, if we're over 20 years in, there's if you're just going to put out placeholder music, you should just not put music out. I think, it just doesn't make sense. And from being a fan of that. And we also talked about, Metallica, a band like that has been a band for so long that people have all these different entry points to Metallica, right? So your favorite album and my favorite album might be different, but we can debate it, and I think it is debatable. And I think that Fall Out Boy has some of that, and we hadn't made a record that tried to encompass all of our eras, make the ultimate Fall Out Boy record. And so I think that all kind of went into this one.
And you had said in an interview that you watched that Metallica documentary.
I did.
That really resonated with you.
Yeah, because I don't really know why. When you just get time completely wrong, I was like, oh, they've been a band for 40 years. But I was like, no, they've been a band kind of the exact same amount that we have.
Yeah, it's weird because you remember thinking, watching that movie, wow, this is a band that's really been in it for a long time. And then you get there and you're like, oh no, we've been there, we've been doing it that long.
Yeah.
It kind of, time flies, doesn't it? So.
And the similarities with the approach of the Foley album, which was not as popular as the other albums, but something that was significant to you guys. Talk about those parallels and the similarities between this album and the Foley album.
Well, so to me, the similarities are really only in methodology, because you're not going to go back in time. You're not going to, we're not even writing about the same kind of stuff. Like I wouldn't say the record sounds like it or even feels like it. But when we made that record, we savored every minute of making it. Like we really, and I have to own up to it. I was a little bit like obsessed. I was down this spiral of like all these ideas of what it had to sound like. And I was very, very meticulous and picky and maybe a little bit unpleasant. Sorry, guys. Because I just really I was like, no,
I forgive you.
Thank you, Andy. But I just really had to get this thing out. And Neil Avron, who produced it, was so amazing at guiding that, at carefully, meticulously, crafting a thing with you. And I was like, what if we did something like that now, when we're not all crabby at each other?
And I gotta say, as not being Patrick, is that on Foley I Do, it was a little bit of a kitchen sink record where Patrick would put everything into it.
Yeah.
And I think that I've seen as you've grown as a writer that like you're able to like rather than putting everything into it, you start with like finer ingredients or something.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
totally.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
I that's what I noticed from this experience.
Anybody ever seen Walk Hard? Okay, you know the bit where he gets to the didgeridoo, like where he's like, that where he just goes overboard. That was kind of Foley for me, where I was like, I wrote like 80 song ideas for that record, and just all of these things. I just went so far overboard because I was like following, I don't know, and I was like, what if my contribution to this record was like a little bit more focused?
There's 20 pounds in a 10-pound bag, and I think we can get a little more in.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, that comes with experience and wisdom, years later. Do you think people look back at it now and appreciate it more? Appreciate that record more?
Clearly, I think that's the case. But I also think it's very deceptive to like look back at things because music was so different then, right? Like Lady Gaga had kind of exploded, and Four on the Floor was kind of everywhere, dance music, and it was hard to exist. It was like one of the first moments where it was like kind of hard to exist as a rock band, and in that landscape. And so making a weird record makes it even weird. It's like you would have to time travel back to like kind of feel the way it felt. Yeah.
Well, and to kind of the thing Pete was saying earlier too. I mean, there's so many different entry points for people. So I think for somebody, that's their favorite record. For somebody, that was the first record that they fell in love with of ours. For somebody, it was Mania. For somebody, it was, American Beauty, American Psycho. So it's hard to like pick and go. I think it's really easy as a band to lose sight of that, to lose sight of the fact that like all of these, they're not really yours anymore after they're out in the world, So your opinions on them kind of don't really matter, do they? It's
and like they change, like a bottle of wine or something, right? It just changes as time,
They always get better. Our
It
records
reminds me-
always get better.
This one's going bad. It's skunky.
It reminds me, since you work with Rivers a bunch, that it reminds me of the Pinkerton album. At the time, people didn't care for the Pinkerton album.
Which is because I remember that. I remember listening to it on Q101 and being obsessed with the record. And
Love The Good Life.
Yeah, amazing
One of my
song.
favorite songs, yeah.
El Scorcho. It was a great. It had a great thing. It was a great record. But then, at the time, people were like, "Ooh,
It's not the Blue Album.
Yeah, and then in retrospect, that's one of the most beloved records.
Masterpiece.
So.
Right. There's this renewed interest in like the 2K emo and pop punk sound, and you guys are certainly part of that, and certainly part of the history of that. But I think Patrick, you had said in an article that you weren't necessarily embraced by that scene fully.
Well,
at the time.
I just mean that okay, so Chicago had a thriving and very defined emo scene, and by that I mean like Midwest emo was a thing, right? So when we started, we weren't that, and none of the bands now that get called emo were that, and we all knew that. Like, it wasn't like we were all different. That we were like a hardcore band that played pop punk or something. I don't really know what we called ourselves. We didn't have a name for it, and emo existed, and wasn't mean to us, but they weren't like
I also think that we like weren't trying to enter into that scene. We kind of created our own scene out in the suburbs and just played at whatever. We would just play until a fire marshal would show up. Basically, that was like kind of the rule of the early shows, and it was. And we've talked about it with this record. There's like a bit of Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Like you and I really mean this for anybody who's playing music or making art. Like you just got to get out and like make it and create it and find other people that are like minded and like make your own scene. That's like what it is. You know what I mean? And it's less about like not being a part of someone else's and just kind of creating your own universe.
And I guess what I was trying to say, tying into that, what I was trying to say is that there really wasn't a scene to be a part of at the time, you know. So like now, so I think in retrospect, it's very easy to say like, oh, all these bands were a thing, but it's like at the time, you know, we were kind of just figuring it out. You know, we were just kind of making it up as we went along. You know.
Well, I think now it's more of, I think maybe 15, almost 20 years ago, it was like one lane or the other. Like you were either this kind of band or this kind of band.
And we were never that.
No,
you know what I mean? Like
no,
we were just like, that's like people are like, why is Jay-Z on the record? Or why, you know, like why are you working with the guy that did
Why'd
like
you do a song with Wyclef?
Yeah.
Pretty awesome song.
And it's just kind of how we have really different tastes and we have really different influences. And so I love, like, because I'll see my kids listening to music now and it's just like kind of all over the place. They just,
it's fluid.
Like, yeah, they like what they like and it's less about like, this is this genre and this is, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see.
Yeah. What did you learn anything or glean anything from going on the Hella Mega tour with the guys from Green Day and Weezer? You work with the Rivers. You learn anything from those elder statesmen, if you will?
What did we learn from those guys?
I will say, Green Day, I was surprised at the way that they interact as people, because I think the longer you go on as a band, it's really easy. You hear these stories about these famous bands that, like, you know, they're business associates at this point. They're not.
We'd
like
be
friends
sitting with a
anymore.
cup to the door trying to like catch new Green Day songs, put them out before they put them out, you know?
Yeah.
And we would just hear them laughing with each other, and we're like, "What are they doing? What is happening?"
I like that.
I need to know this now.
I like that pivot from a joke into a reality. No, they really get on with each other. They really hang out with each other, which is kind of one of those things that it's silly because you kind of forget, but it's really important in a band. It's like to be buddies, to like hang out with each other, and we always have. But I think it's sometimes you get kind of carried away in whatever you're doing, and it's like it's nice to like, yeah, we should all go out to dinner, like little things like that, because it's very silly, but it pays dividends later. You know, right. You guys like it. You're in it together, you know.
And my biggest, I think, or one of the biggest takeaways was that people are like asking us about what we were thinking about when we made this record, and I thought a lot about like when us and My Chemical Romance and Panic and Paramore were all kind of going on TRL for the first time. I think Green Day could have easily just gone and been like, we'll just make some like music like this, and we'll just, you know, and instead they made like an insane record, like an insane rock record, and Boulevard Broken Dreams, and you know, like it, and in a weird way it was like adjacent to us, but you felt that it was like spiritually bigger than all of it, like they'd been doing it since the 90s, you know, or whatever, and I think that really, the idea of that, of being adjacent to what's happening right now, but not going and trying to like rehash something, really informed this record.
Yeah, there's a big difference between following your inspiration and being inspired by the energy of a thing that's happening, and you know, being your dad putting on, you know, like putting on the cool T-shirt and being like, "Hey guys," you know. Like,
and plus, you know, I would think authenticity is just so important now in 2023, where you know your fans know if it's real and you're connected to your art.
Yeah, and I think in a time where complete inauthenticity is kind of everywhere and prevalent everywhere, like, you know, like with FOMO, and like I think that in any kind of art, being authentic cuts through a little bit.
Yeah. And you know, we made these people call to win tickets.
Wow.
You know,
thank you
on
guys.
the phone.
Thank you guys.
What can you tell us about, you know, the album comes out in 2 months, and you've released the second song today. What can you, I know the rollout's been cryptic with the hints, like Field of Dreams. I saw something on Twitter today. The clue is at the actual Field of Dreams in Iowa.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys come together and hash out ideas? Is it Andy? Is it your ideas to really get these really cool, clever clues? You know, like
I find out when you do so.
okay. So what can you tell us without telling us anything? Or I'll give you. I like in the Love from the Other Side video when Grandpa Pete is pulling out the book from the bookshelf, and you see the other books on the shelf, and you see the titles. If you look closely, there are like references to books and bands.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that we always will make like some subtle, like if it looks too much like a clue, it's probably not actually a clue.
Okay.
So like
I
there's
like that.
just head nods to bands.
Like Catch 182.
Yeah, those are just like honestly.
Good Charlotte's Web. I saw
Yeah,
there.
they're just friends or
It's
whatever. But as far as the album, I don't know. I would say, what could we say about the album? So like to me, okay, I'll say something about the album. Is that it's like we have this face, this smiley, frowny kind of face, and the album itself kind of has two sides to it. Like there's this side, that's this speech that that Ethan Hawke gives in Reality Bites, where he talks about he never knew his dad, and then while his dad was dying, he gives him this pink seashell, and it's got all the answers, and he's like, well, I guess there are no answers, and it's kind of like this nihilism, right? Like it's like the nothing matters, so I'll just do whatever, and so that's one side of the record. But I think we thought that you've heard that before, or we've seen that kind of art before. So we also the other side of it is kind of more the Field of Dreams, and that's where Kevin Costner. And these are two movies you should watch, even if you don't like sports or don't like the '90s. They're both great. In that movie, he lives on a farm in Iowa, and he just talks about how his dad, like, he never got to know him before he was old, and his dad never did anything crazy. So he just does one kind of crazy thing where he builds this field. And that's the whole thing of like breaking out of that nihilism, is like you have to do something crazy. You got to do something, like you got to just go for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you have to just do it.
Right. Especially if it's in your heart, because
Totally.
you get one turn at life.
Totally.
And when you're sitting at the end of your life, you're going to look back and go, "Oh, I should have done."
And it's short and it's long. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
both.
And I kind of just wanted to add too, because you were talking about there's this groundswell of renewed appreciation for a lot of the stuff that happened in the I guess the early 2000s or whatever musically. I didn't know that. I didn't know that when I started writing the record. So it's definitely not. It's definitely more related. Like I wanted to make sure that it's a record that, we're still the band that made Mania 5 years ago. We're still that band. But I wanted to make something in a very different way. Like I wanted to take our time. So it's funny because you look at it and there's a 5-year gap, but we were working on the record for a lot of it, a lot more than we worked on other records. So I'd say more than anything, I can't wait for people to hear it because we savored it for so long. Like I really put a lot into it. So.
And how has your film scoring and TV scoring work? Does that translate into the new album somehow? There's some influences.
Yeah, definitely. It was really different because this time around, I didn't have to I was always relying on somebody else's expertise. I would hum a thing and be like, I don't know, and then maybe the strings could do like this. Yeah. And this time I was able to, I was writing out. There's a decent amount of strings and horns and orchestration and stuff across the record. I mean, there's a little bit on Love from the Other Side you can hear, but
We rented the ArcLight in Los Angeles,
LA.
and we just played E.T. continuously for like 1,000 days in silence, and he just wrote the record to that. So I don't know. It's pretty good.
I like that visual. Is that the next clue? Is that the next clue? Is that the next seashell clue?
I'm trying to follow right now.
Yeah.
I'm very lost. I'll be honest.
Well, the video that you released today with Rivers, if you haven't seen it yet, no spoilers. It starts at Pink's, which is right a couple blocks from that.
It is.
location,
It was
so.
convenient for Patrick.
Yeah, because apparently I was living at the ArcLight watching E.T. So.
And another no spoilers. You own stunts? You own stunts?
I don't know if that was a joke. I didn't do all of my stunts. I don't know about these guys.
I can't remember.
I was kind of
Patrick,
I am
less is more, Patrick. Less is more.
well, I did a stunt that.
What you're saying and not saying.
You did a stunt.
There's a stunt that got cut, and I was kind of bummed.
All right. Get online and watch.
He's like Tom Cruise, does his own stunts, baby.
There you go.
I'm also very short.
Yeah. The show tonight at the Metro, very, very exciting for Chicago and these fans and the fans that really have been just calling for these tickets. It's an excitement that thank you for bringing it back to our medium, our radio medium. It's really exciting to just see and hear the enthusiasm and the despair and the pain.
I have
people
to,
winning tickets.
I have to say that as an artist, if anyone here plays music, or anyone who's listening plays music, hearing your song on the radio is the way it's compressed and the way it sounds and the DJ talking into it is like one of the it feels like you baked the cake and somebody was like, came in the shop one day and ordered it. You know what I mean? You're like,
Yeah.
this feels so. It feels very
That
cool.
thing you do moment.
Totally.
Yeah. And it sounds good on this end.
Is that a clue?
Oh, is it? Maybe it is. You're looking back in a year. Say you're back here in a year. You guys have key cards, right? You can come back anytime. Right?
Oh, cool.
Okay. You're looking back in a year. You're going to say 2023 was the year we accomplished blank.
Oh wow.
What do you hope to accomplish? Like,
What should we accomplish this year?
What can we do? I don't know.
Can
okay, think about that for a
It's
second.
too big.
Maybe
of a
I'll finally
question.
figure out Spanish. I don't know. But
I'm going to ask you about, since another clue that I saw, I remember seeing this a while ago, Celebrity Family Feud with Weezer. You guys make it to the final round, and Patrick, month that begins with A.
I don't. I barely remember.
You
that
blanked
episode.
on it.
And was that the one?
It's the month you were born in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But was that the one with Steve Harvey?
Yeah,
host
Steve
that show?
Harvey, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so in between takes, he would because when you're up there,
You're probably
and-
distracted by his mustache.
No, he just says crazy stuff, and everything he says, I'd be like, "What?" And then there's a question, and I was like, "Wait, what did? We're not okay."
He's one of the funniest of all time.
Yeah, it was kind of and I'm also, I'm a little bit of an anxious guy, if that's not obvious. So,
Yeah.
so it didn't really, me under pressure on national TV. That's a way to really get good answers out of me.
We still love you, man.
It's really hard to come up with stuff.
It's
on
also
that
like
show.
it's very easy when you're like the next person. You're like, just say it, and then when it's your turn, it's. I would say as far as accomplishments, I don't know if this is an accomplishment, but there's a lot of places that we since the pandemic have not been able to return to, and I would hope in 2023 that we're gonna get around to we got a lot of friends, a lot of fans around the world that we haven't really gotten to play for in a long time, and so I hope we get to do that.
And what locally here too. Like I'm sure the ticket demand for your friends and family from here has been a little high.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because Metro holds how many people and
1,100?
between family and friends already. It's like, well,
Yeah.
we'll probably have to just come back at some point. I think.
It came up on my Facebook memories, I think, yesterday when you guys played Lincoln Hall in 2015. And I think I was sitting next to you in the balcony. Was it your parents? Were your parents
Probably,
there?
yeah, my
I think it
parents
was your
were there.
parents that were there. And that came up as just a random memory. That was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Crazy.
So you guys are back. This is Fallout Boy.
Thank you.
We're going to take some pictures. And one more time for Fallout Boy.